Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and tonight we will be starting off our report with radio. Now, without further ado, let us all go down first with its definition. Next slide, please.
So, radio is sound communication by radio waves, usually through the transmission of music, news, and other types of programs from single broadcast stations to multitudes of individual listeners equipped with radio receivers. It is basically a form of sound communication that uses radio waves to transmit music, news, and other programming from a single broadcast station to a larger number of people who have radio receivers. It is a method of transmitting electromagnetic signals across great distances in order to transmit data from one location to another.
Who invented radio? So the person who invented radio was Guglielmo Marconi. He is also known as the father of radio. Marconi was an Italian inventor that proved that communicating through radio waves was possible. Born in Italy in 1874, he began experimenting with his inventions at the age of 20 after becoming aware of the work of Hertz in electromagnetic waves, or also known as radio waves. Marconi identified this area was not popularly pursued by other inventors at that time. In 1895, Marconi invented what he called as the wireless telegraph while experimenting in his parents' attic. So the first edition of radio was patented in 1896. He used radio waves to transmit Morse code, and the instrument he used became known as the radio. In 1909, Marconi shared the Nobel Prize for Physics with Ferdinand Braun. So Ferdinand Braun is a German. So the recognition of their contributions to the development of wireless telegraphy. During in July 1986, Marconi made the first demonstration of his invention, the radio transmitter and the receiver, for the British government. Then the radio works by changing sounds or signals into radio waves which travel through air, space, and solid objects, and the radio receiver changes them back into the sounds, words, and music we hear. So there are a lot of people that given their contributions to the invention of radio. So this is a combined effort of several scientists and inventors beginning in the 18th century. There are several whose contributions to the field of science regarding radio waves were significant. We have James Clerk Maxwell. So Maxwell was a Scottish scientist that predicted the existence of radio waves during the 1860s. We have Heinrich Rudolf Hertz. So Hertz was a German scientist, and in 1866 he discovered that vibrations of electric current could be projected into space in the form of radio waves. A year before that, in 1865, he sent and received the first radio signal communication. On December 12, 1901, he flashed the first wireless radio signal across the Atlantic Ocean, and he sent and received the first transatlantic radio telegraph message in 1902. We have also Nikola Tesla. He is said to have assembled and made the first radio transmissions in 1893 in St. Louis, Missouri. Yet he is not given credit for the discovery of radio since Marconi was able to get a patent in England 4 years before Tesla. So there are others that have given their contribution to the invention of the radio as well, and how to use and control radio waves that took the contribution of many scientists, researchers, and inventors. We have Ernst Alexanderson. Alexanderson, also known as Alex, was one of the most important engineers of the 20th century. He invented 344 patented items, including many telecommunications devices. So he helped guide research to further develop radio communications and other technologies of his time. Then we have Reginald Fessenden. Fessenden was a well-known Canadian scientist and an inventor as well. He worked with Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse. So he was inspired by Alexander Graham Bell and was his apprentice when Bell made his historic first long distance call. He was the first to send a telegraphic message through dots and dashes in the 1890s. So on December 23, 1900s, Fessenden received the first wireless transmission of a human voice over a short distance. So this is less than 1 mile. And the last person is Edwin Armstrong. So Armstrong was an American inventor who laid the groundwork for the modern radio and electronic circuitry. He is credited for creating the FM radio frequencies. So because of these talented and smart people who invented the radio, in the early 1920s, radio played an important role in people's lives, and over 500 stations were broadcasting news, music, sports, drama, and variety shows through radio. Next, Ron.
So, historical evolution of radio. In June 1922, a couple of 50-watt radio stations were established in Pasay and in Manila by Henry Herman. During that time, the Filipinos readily accepted radio news and entertainment programs, and local businessmen who recognized its profitability established their own radio stations to advertise their products and services. In 1924, an American established the first AM radio station named KZKZ. Herman was the founder of the electrical supply company, and he gained permission, possibly from local government and the military, to operate more than one station. In 1929, KZRC Radio Cebu opened in Cebu and introduced radio broadcasting in the province. However, it was closed down because shortwave relay signals were unsuccessful between Cebu and Manila. It reopened after a decade and fearlessly went on air with the guerrilla movements. So Henry Herman launched a handful of 50-watt radio stations in Pasay and in Manila in June 1922. The Filipinos by that time readily embraced radio news and entertainment programs, and local businessmen, seeing the potential for profit, founded their own radio stations to promote their goods and services. The first AM radio station, which is the KZKZ, was founded in 1924 by an American. The electrical supply company was founded by Henry Herman, and he obtained clearance to operate many stations, possibly from local administration and the military. KZRC or Radio Cebu was founded in Cebu in 1929 and was the first radio station in the province. Shortwave relay communications between Cebu and Manila were unsuccessful, therefore, it was shut down. After a decade, it resurfaced and bravely went on broadcast with guerrilla movements.
So next, in 1931, the board examined applications for licenses to operate radio, allocated band frequencies, and conducted inspections for the office of the Secretary of Commerce and Industry. And as colony of the USA, four-letter call signs beginning with KZ were in use. Francisco Coco Trinidad is known as the father of Philippine broadcasting, attended the International Telecommunications Union or the ITU. It is in 1947 held in Atlantic City in the US. And when the World War II was over, or after the World War II, KZFM was the first radio station to return on the air. So it reopened in May 1945 and was reopened by the U.S. Army Office of War Information. Now, and after 2 years, which is already in 1947, KZFM were named as DZFM already. It became the nucleus of the Philippine broadcasting system. Traditionally, broadcast stations are assigned one of three predominant prefixes depending on the location of their license. DZ for Luzon, DY for Visayas, and DX for Mindanao. So the Philippines' history in terms of a free press is a checkered past. In the beginning, the news cens- was censored by the Americans, but later under the Americans, the Philippines press was open and freewheeling before martial law was imposed under President Ferdinand Marcos in 1972. So next slide, please. Now, how radio became popular in the Philippines. So, we already know that radio created a shared national experience of hearing the news, information, and entertainment as it happened. So, radio became popular here in the Philippines as it was the cheapest form of entertainment. And it provided the public with far better entertainment than most people were accustomed to. So, sa una, dili pa nato afford to buy TV. And ang radio ra atong main source para makapaminaw og mga news or ma-entertain sa different programs nila. Right? So, as a result, its popularity grew rapidly in the late 1920s and early 1930s. And by 1934, there are already 60% of the nation's household had radios. So bisan gani karon naara man japoy mga uban nga balay nga use Japan radios. Like in our house, we are still using it and maybe sa inyo hapon, di ba? So now, according to a survey conducted by Kantar Media, this is a 2018 survey. It was stated there that 62% of the respondents in the Philippines stated accessing media through radio or audio for the past 12 months. Notably, 52% of consumers have used radio to access media in the past 7 days. So there are really some of us pa nga use of radio, no? Okay, next slide, please.
Okay, thank you for that, my fellow reporters. No, and now, ladies and gentlemen, again, we will be landing into the importance of a radio. Now, disclaimer: this is not the importance that I'll be talking about right here is not about kanang for a specific place only, like not only in our country. No, that will be discussed later. This will be kind of like a general term. Something like a common around the world. Okay, so let's dive in. Radio is indeed a great and useful invention of modern science. It is a part and parcel of our modern life. It as well plays a very important role in our lives, and that its broadcasts can provide information and entertainment, which usually can be broadcasted for 24 hours a day or sometimes just 12 hours, no, to provide the most recent updates about news or something entertainment related to listeners. Now, I would like to talk about entertainment here now because I think this a branch of this could be radio dramas, no? And I am a huge, like, really big fan of radio dramas before. I think I can remember. I was addicted to it actually when I was 7 years old because we don't have a TV at that time. Actually, electricity. We only have candles and in a radio that's battery operated. So every I think 3 o'clock in the afternoon there's this radio drama and it's horror theme. Now and what fascinates me is that the way they use their voices, from like, oh, what on John. So they can just flip from being an old man to Ayoko, to like a ladylike voice in an instant. And girl, don't tell me that's not talent, because that is talent, ladies and gentlemen. So I think I also learned some tricks, no, when you do radio dramas, and because I've read about it a long time ago, and it was said there that when you want to portray something burning, it's a radio drama now since you can see anything. They said that you crumple a plastic. So here I have a plastic. You can hear it. So, inani ko na siya representation that something's burning in a radio drama. So ako siyang crumple like this. You can hear it. I don't know if like you can visualize that it's burning, but that's inana ko na ilang style, no, to portray that the house is burning, or something is burning in a radio drama, no. So yeah, too much for that. That's in line with the entertainment related, of course, to the listeners. Now, when there is no access to the internet, people can still search the airwaves for trustworthy sources. Of course, this being the news, no more news anchors, because they've researched about the news that they will be delivering every day. No, so even electricity is not a necessity for battery operated and hand cranked radios. So this is indeed very important for people na, the technology's hands were not reached, no, or they were not reached by the hands of the technology, especially those sa mga bukid, no. So having this battery operated radio is a genius invention, actually, because you could store batteries. You could have stocks of batteries, and then when one wears out, you can just refill them with a new one, and you could still, hear about the news about what's happening around the world, even though you're let's say you're in a box, as long as you have a radio. So it is an easy means of entertainment. Radio is not costly, and any person, whether you're rich or poor, can buy it and also enjoy its various programs wherever you are in the world. It is also a means of communication. We all know that. And its various important items are being broadcasted, and as well as the different types of government programs are also announced on the radio. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So as a result, people can be aware of the government's idea. Sometimes mga campaigns, especially karon nga, election is nearing. So, the unsa mga plataforma nila, what their beliefs are, how they're going to lead the country, especially with the presidential candidates, no. So you can also pwede mo lang matimbang-timbang kung asa mo i-vote. So the warnings of different types are broadcasted on the radio as well as many other types of programs which are also broadcasted in it. Among them, the news, of course, is very important to all of us. Radio broadcasts news at every hour. Usually, there comes a time na mo yung flash report, di ba? Usually when you're listening to music, usually these are things, or let's say mga usually accidents na nahitabo at that exact moment. So that's why usually they insert it in between their programs, radio programs, para like possibly ang aksidente, it could be relative, para ma-inform ka dayon, so that the person involved in that accident could be acted upon right away, no, so that his or her life could still be saved. Okay, so radio broadcasts various they also talk about educational programs, to educate people. I could still remember in news program, it was educational one, no. I think the term was tunghaan sa kahanginan. So it translates in English as school on air. So actually it was a fascinating program, because like you're really learning, and then you're going to really pass your assignment to the radio station. And then I think after 2 months, I think that's only the range in your class. At the end of that, if present ka, perfect imong attendance, no, imura i-text, you're just going to send a message that you're present. So after the 2-month period, you can have actually a certificate na na-complete mo ang class. So it's actually very good, especially when you're when you're someone off limits, or your parents can afford to send you to school, so this could be a medium para you can get at least the basic skills or the basic knowledge you need, no? So also the sport of different kinds has become very familiar to us thanks to the satellite technology. A radio broadcasts different types of sports commentary, and as well as government broadcasts, they broadcast various public welfare programs. Usually, it something that would help us cope up with like any, let's say, pandemic, like right now, diba, mo sila nga, like there's a vaccination program, or before there's a hand washing program, no, for the welfare of the people in the community. So of course radio has its advantages over other mass media outlets like the television in terms of being handy, easily accessible, and cheap, because usually it's not a good thing actually to carry a television around. Like imagine yourself carrying that on your back while it's on. No, I don't think that's good. So having a radio is really, or indeed, the perfect source of portable information, and it is accessible at home, in the office, or in the car. Next slide, please. And so basically, the radio is virtually everywhere at any time of the day. There are about, I think this is in America, no? There are about 85,000 villages in that country nga naan radio. So a mass medium like the radio can play an important role in the media sector. Our technology is not rich. No, I think the thing is referring here that it's not rich. I think in terms of the comfort it can give, or the information it can provide, because the the quote says nothing is perfect. So even though technology makes our lives easier, sometimes there are faults. There are faults because it's also created by a being a dili po siya perfect. Us humans, we created technology. So as radio is cheap, it can be bought by almost everybody of our country. It is used as a medium to educate the illiterate people. Now, I've discussed that about when your parents cannot afford to send you to school. So it broadcasts also family planning programs and makes people aware of it. I think this can help in preventing overpopulation, no? And also para po ma-manage ang family, no? Di na ta kay sige, like create and create, and to the point that we cannot provide already for the creation that we made. So it also broadcasts discussion as well as information on various fatal diseases like cancer, AIDS, and etc. And right now, the coronavirus. It tells us their causes as well as their effects and their prevention. Thus, it makes us conscious of those diseases. So, as what I have mentioned, an education program is also a favorite program for students. And usually, I listen to it regularly. I think I can discuss that again. And people can be benefited by such type of program. A word, the radio is very useful to all of us. It broadcasts various important programs. And indeed, it is a means of great entertainment as well as communication. Next slide, please.
All right. So thank you, John Mark, for that very informational discussion. So now, um, we will now proceed to we will now be more particular with how radio is very important, specifically in our country, the Philippines. So, radio continues to be a significant source of information for Filipinos as it reaches even the remotest areas, as noted by the Media Ownership Monitor, or MOM, in 2017. So there is no recent data on audiences' attitudes towards radio as source of content, but the most recent publicly available data indicates that as of 2013, it is the second most used medium, based on what the Philippine Statistics Authority said in 2013. So about 2 out of 5, or 41% of the population in the Philippines, listen to the radio at least once a week. So imagine how Filipinos are mostly into listening radio, um, and we all know that radio, we can see how radio is very powerful in our country, as radio plays a major role in um, relaying or giving information and different new, educational information, and also sharing news. But aside from that, radio, as we can see, is very ideal for low income populations, as it is very affordable. Like, unlike television, just like what John Mark said, like television, you cannot bring that anywhere. But radio, you can just bring it everywhere. You can listen news everywhere, music, lifestyle, radio dramas, however you want, and wherever or whenever you want, you can listen different educational information or news from the radio. So it's very affordable for and it's very ideal for low income populations and sparsely populated areas, since um uh it can reach a wide audience. So in countries where access to internet is limited, just like in our country, the Philippines, and illiteracy rates are high, radio stations play a major role in sharing news and educational information. And aside from that, radio also allowed for the transmission of, again, music, bringing different styles, radio dramas, lifestyle, and most especially timely news. So because of the evolution of technology nowadays, radio is now accessible through laptops, computers, phones, and even smart speakers. So you can listen to your favorite station whenever you want and however you want. And also, um, radio can be radio allows consumers to multitask and listen while they work or play. So that explains how radio is very essential in today's world, and most particularly in our country, the Philippines. So next, Joy.
Thank you, Harriet. Yeah. So, because the radio is described as the most pervasive medium, it's not surprising that hundreds of regional and community radio stations operates in the country. Not much empirical data is publicly available when it comes to professional practices and consumption habits of community radio. But advertisers see radio, particularly local outlets, as the most effective means of reaching customers. Community radio is also seen as a venue for educational programming, especially to those under government agencies, such as those discussing nutrition and other grassroots issues. At the same time, some ethnic um, minority groups, as well as the belligerent and insurgent forces, use the radio to supplement their face to face organizing. Next slide, please. So, Calderiela People Alliance with instant occasionally run radio programs as a medium for cultural activism. Radio journalists more than print journalists bear bear the brunt of violence against media workers in the Philippines. Rosales 2016 attribute this to an interweaving factor as a post Marcos legacy of all powerful and well entrenched military and politician, weak judicial system, lack of professionalism among newsmakers, and the lack of aid and protections of journalists from the station owner who compress a small and powerful oligarchy in the Philippines. So, dito sa Cordillera Dapit, they use radio as medium for their cultural activism. Like, maybe ilahang gina broadcast sa radio ilahang mga cultural activities or ilang mga, kanang mga
activities or activism. Dayon sa ang radio journalist pod kay sila jud mo'y siging katubang or bear og mga most worst violence against media kay mga media workers kay yeah sila mailhan man sila dayon good kay ano biya kanang the broadcast ba sila on air so ilaha jung tingog may madunggan ug unsang information ilahang ihatag and for example if especially upcoming ng elections and you know kanang na sila may istorya kabahin ana nga mo dalagan and something like that then offend and we don't know nga ilahang life kay at risk. So, muna sila nga, sila jud may siging gaber of most worst violence against media workers. As besides sa print journalists kay ano man sila pag musulat sila og news or musulat sila og piece of information kay pwede raman nilang anonymous or something dili kay sila matrace dugay pa silang matrace compared aning mga radio journalists. And then, so, katong kabahin sa Marcos nga legacy of powerful and well-intrinsic military and politician, chuchu nga katong, I don't know if you heard that news, but yeah, it's because of the weak of judicial system that we have and the lack of professionalism among the newsmaker nga mausahay spread pod siya og mga fake news kay yeah. And then of course, one of ano pod nila is kanang ilahang protection for journalists. Kabantay mga atong radio um ato to siya radio DJ to siya or something sa Dumaguete nga gipatay.
Yes, Rex
I don't know
Cornelio.
his name. Isa to siya Mar?
Rex Cornelio.
Yes, kato
Yeah.
siya. I don't know the
Mm-mm.
um unsa ni information or ngano siyang gipatay pero yeah ilaha jung ang mga radio journalist gyud kay murag ilahang real life kay at risk. I mean if journalist ka na jud sa at risk imong life especially if pataka ka og pagawas og information and confidential dayto imong gipagawas and wala ka kabalo nga you know kabalo na tana guys. So yeah, that's it. So, one of the major importance margi pang istorya naman to nila ni Magbanwa and ni Harriet. But what's lacking is that yeah, mo lagi ni siya ang ato. We have weak judicial system, lack of professionalism among our newsmaker, and the lack of aid and protection for journalists. So, yeah, hopefully i-appeal po na siya kanang sa mga importance nila. That's all.
So that is all for tonight, guys. Thank you.